Islamic Faith, God, the Quran, and the existence of God. Knowledge of God's existence is latent in human nature and is a part of it. The Quran only revives this knowledge and brings it out by pointing to the signs of God's existence and His attributes. In this, it differs from the way theologians and the philosophers follow in proving God's existence. The knowledge that a contingent being needs someone to bring it into existence is part of our natural knowledge. With regard to particular beings, this knowledge is necessary and more self evident than with regard to universals. For we arrive at the universals only after we have examined the particulars. The same is true of all universal propositions on which most theologians and philosophers base their arguments, such as the whole is greater than the part, contraries do not exist together or vanish together, that the ones that are equal to something are equal to each other, and so on. For whenever you think of any whole, you know that it is greater than its parts, even though you may not have been aware of it as a universal proposition. Everyone knows, for example, that a human body is more than its organs, a dirham is more than its fractions, a city is more than its neighborhoods, and that a mountain is more than its parts. The same is true with regard to contraries, their existence and non existence. Whenever you think of the existence and non existence of anything, you know that it cannot both exist and not exist at the same time, that either it exists or does not exist. You make the judgment about particular things, even though you may not call up in your mind the universal truth regarding contraries, and so on. Since a general argument is concerned with something general, not particular, the proper way to prove the existence of God is to point to signs, ayat. This is the way of the Quran, and this is what is inherent in our nature. Even though deductive reasoning is correct, its utility is limited. And the Quran, whenever it uses deductive reasoning in theological issues, employs the argument of priority, qiyas al-awla, and not the argument that uses common terms. For the defects and imperfections that should be negated of creatures must be negated of the Creator in the first place, and the excellences and perfections free from all defects which are asserted of creatures, such as life, knowledge, and power, must be asserted of the Creator before anyone else. All created beings are signs of the Creator. The difference between a sign, ayat, and an argument, qiyas, is that the sign proves the object itself, of which it is the sign. Every created being is a sign and a proof of the Creator Himself, as we have explained at other places. Human nature knows the Creator without these signs. That knowledge is inherent in it. Had it not known Him before these signs, it could not have known that they are His signs. For they are signs and proofs of God, just as a name is a sign of the object named. One must have known the object before one may know the name and know that it is the name of this particular object. Similarly, for a sign to be the proof of an object, one must have known the object and known that the said sign is associated with it, and that it necessarily implies its existence. It follows that if the object has not been known, it cannot be known that the sign points to it. The knowledge of a relation depends upon the knowledge of the thing which is related, as well as the thing to which it is related. However, sometimes one does not know the thing which is related, or that it is a sign of the thing to which it is related. But when one imagines it, one knows the object it signifies. People know that creatures are the signs and proofs of the Creator. This means that they must have already known the Creator, so that they can pronounce that these things are His signs. What we want to underline is that it is this rational and natural method which the Quran adopts and which is upheld by reason and revelation, by thought and tradition. On the other hand, philosophers like Ibn Sina, Ar-Razi and their followers think that the way to prove the existence of God is to argue from the contingency of the world, to deduce the existence of the necessary being from the existence of possible beings. They proceed like this. Existence is either necessary or possible, and in order for the possible to exist, there must be a necessary being. Hence, the necessary being exists. Ibn Sina was the first to formulate this argument. He took some ideas from the theologians and some from the philosophers and combined them in this form. The theologians had divided existence into eternal and contingent. Ibn Sina, on the other hand, divided it into necessary and possible. For in his view, the spheres are not contingent, they are only possible. This distinction was something new. No philosopher before him had ever done that. In fact, leading fingers among them considered this distinction to be wrong and charged him with going against earlier philosophers and all rational thinkers. We have shown elsewhere that eternity and necessity of existence imply each other. That this is the view of all the wise men of the past and present, except these people, and that there is no disagreement between them on this point. It is common experience that things come into existence after they had not been existing, and that they go out of existence after they have existed. It is clear that which is non-existent or which ceases to exist cannot be the necessary being or an eternal, everlasting thing. If at all these people succeed in proving the existence of the necessary being, there is nothing in their argument to show that he is different from the heavens and the spheres. Al-Ghazali and others have demonstrated that they have failed in this regard. Their argument that no body can be a necessary being because it is a compound, and the necessary being is not a compound being, is not correct. We have elsewhere advanced a number of arguments and shown that this view is wrong. Various other thinkers have shown in their own way the falsity of this view. Al-Ghazali is one of them. The concept of necessity is very vague, since it may mean a number of things. It may mean that which exists in itself and does not vanish. On that meaning, both essence and the attributes will be necessary. Or it may mean that which exists in itself and by itself. On that meaning, only the essence is necessary and not the attributes. Or it may mean the originator is the same as the creator. On this meaning, the necessary being will be the essence qualified with attributes, for the essence without the attributes cannot create, nor can the attributes without the essence. This vagueness has led many claimants of gnosis and enlightenment that follows these people to call This vagueness had led many claimants of gnosis and the enlightenment that follows these people to call the necessary being as such, al-wajud al-mutlaq, as we have explained elsewhere. Fatawa, volume 1st, page 47 to 50. The necessary being is other than the possible beings. Being may be taken to mean as such, al-wajud al-mutlaq, which will comprehend the necessary being as well as the possible being. In this sense, being is a common universal which does not exist except in mind or in word. Or it may be taken to mean the being which is ascribed to the necessary or to the possible. Being in this sense is specific to the thing to which it is ascribed. Hence, the being of the Creator is other than the being of the world. Similarly, the being of Zaid is other than the being of Umar. And there is no being which is common to any two things. Some people think that things which we predicate of the world are only predicated of the Creator as a metaphor, including the word thing, shay itself. This is the opinion of Jahm and the Bataniya, who agree with him on this point. They refrain from calling God as existing mawjood as a thing or by any other name. Others hold just the opposite view. Everything predicated of God is predicated in the real sense, whereas it is predicated of the world as a metaphor. This is the view of Abu al-Abbas al-Nashi from among the Mu'tazila. People in general believe that things are predicated of both God and the world in the real sense, and for most of them they are predicated of both unequivocally in the broadest sense of the term, or equivocally if that is distinguished from the former. The latter is certainly different from special unequivocal predication in which the meanings are similar while the words are cognate. Only a small group of later thinkers have regarded them to be homonymous as against the majority and the most popular thinkers. Al-Razi has attributed this view to Al-Ash'ari, but it is not correct. For Al-Ash'ari and for his followers in general, wujud or being is a general term divisible into the eternal and the contingent. He, however, believes that the existence of everything is identical with its essence, which is the view of all rational people. Muslims as well as non-Muslims, some people such as Al-Amidi have wrongly inferred from this that the term is a homonym. We have discussed this at length elsewhere for everyone to find out the truth. To one who says that wujud may either refer to the essence or to an attribute over and above the essence, we would put the following question. Do you mean by wujud being as such, which may be eternal and may be possible? Or do you mean by it a particular being? Whether the necessary being or the possible beings? We have three terms here. When we say the wujud of a man, his self, zat, essence or reality, it is specific to him, referring to his own self qualified with his own attributes. Similarly, when we say the wujud of the Lord, his self, his essence, his reality, they all refer to what is specific to him, which is his self qualified with his attributes. Hence, in reply to Al-Amidi's statement that the term wujud refers either to the essence of God or to an attribute over and above it, we say that if you mean by the term being as such, which comprehends both necessary and the possible beings, then it does not refer to something which is specific either to the necessary or to the possible being. It rather refers to a universal concept only exists in mind or in word. There is nothing out in reality there which is something universal as well as real. However, if you mean by wujud that which refers to both, as in the phrase all beings, the necessary and the possible, or being necessary and possible, then it refers to what is specific to each, as when we say the being of the necessary and the being of the possible. In short, it either means being as a universal concept which is divisible, or it means a particular being such as the being of the necessary or the being of the possible, or both, as when we say all beings necessary and possible, or beings necessary and possible, without implying in any case that it is common to both. Al-Amidi has said that if wujud refers to the essence of God, the divine essence will be opposed by all other beings. We would point out that wujud as such, which is divisible, does not refer to what is specific to God. But when we take it in the sense of particular beings, it does refer to God. Similarly, when we take it in a general sense and say being necessary and possible, it also refers to what is specific to God, even though it is opposed by other beings. It is just like saying the divine self and the human self, since each refers to what is specific to itself, even though the reality of one is opposed to the reality of the other. The word wujud refers to God and to the world in a similar way, even though they are two different realities. It may be said that since the reality of one being is different from the reality of the other, the word being, wujud, will be a homonym. This we will say is a mistake which has given rise to other mistakes. Different realities are called by a general name which refers to them unequivocally or equivocally. For example, the word color applies to black, white, and red, even though they are different colors. Similarly, the words attribute, accident, and concept apply to knowledge, power, life, taste, color, and smell, even though they are different realities. In the same way, the word animal applies to human beings and cattle, even though they are different realities. This is all the more true of the word wujud. Diverse realities may have something common between them, which may be referred to by a word such as color. Later on, it may be qualified in order to refer to every particular reality. For example, we may say black color or white color. Similarly, we may say the being of God and the being of man, even though we are using a general term which applies to all its particular instances. We say color or colors, animal, accident or being, which apply to everything that comes under them, even though they may be different realities. This is because these terms comprehend them as does any other general term, even though individual realities differ in another sense from the general terms. If on the other hand the term wujud stands, Al-Amidi says, for an attribute that means one and the same thing in the case of the necessary and the possible, it will follow that the necessary is possible and the possible is necessary, or else the term has to be treated as a homonym. To this objection, we respond in this way. We ask if you mean by the term wujud being as such, or a particular being referring to one thing or the other, as when we say the wujud of the necessary or the wujud of the possible. If you take the term in the first sense, then we will say that it means one and the same thing, but it will not follow thereby that their wujud is similar. Even if their ideas in mind may be similar, it does not follow that they are similar out there. The only thing that follows is that the term applies to both, just as any other term, unequivocal or equivocal. When we say black, it may refer to blackness of pitch or of ink, even though they are not similar. Or when we say white or red, it may refer to many things which are white or red in various degrees. Similarly, the term living applies to the angels, the people in paradise, the fly and the mosquito, even though their lives are completely different. If this is the case, how can the wujud of God or his knowledge or power be like the wujud of the possible or its knowledge or power, even though the word wujud as such or knowledge as such or power as such comprehends them both? But if Al-Amidi says that he means a particular being, such as the being of the necessary or the being of the possible, we will say that what being denotes in one case is different from what it denotes in the other case. That is why it is qualified. We say being of the one or being of the other. This qualification rules out similarity between the two things, which is by no means necessitated by the commonness of the term. For in this case, the difference lies in the term wujud itself, and the qualification through ascription only enforces it, in whatever form we express it, whether the being of the Lord or the necessary being on the one hand and the being of the object created or the possible being on the other. Fatawa, Volume 20, 441 to 447. God's existence is identical with his essence, not something over and above it. People have differed on the question whether the existence of God is same as his essence or something over and above it, as well as on the question whether the term existence should be understood unequivocally or equivocally, or just as a homonym. Some take existence as a homonym, which rules out its division into the necessary and the possible. This conflicts with the judgment of all rational beings as well as with the obvious truths of reason. But if it is taken as a general concept, whether unequivocal or equivocal, it would comprehend all beings and would be common to both necessary and the possible beings. But this common existence will require something for its differentiation into one existence or the other, which can only be the essence of a particular being. That would in turn require that the existence of a being should be over and above its essence. This would mean that the existence of the necessary being depends upon something other than himself. Following Ar-Razi and his disciples, people have generally mentioned three views on the same issue of God's existence. One is that existence is a homonym that has nothing common except the word. The second is that the existence of the necessary being is over and above his essence. The third is that it is existence as such, which is nothing other than the existence devoid of every positive essence. All these views are wrong, and none of them are true. The error arises from the assumption that when we say that existence divides into necessary and the possible, it follows that there is an existence out there which is in the necessary as well as in the possible. There is nothing in the two beings which is common between them in reality except for the word wujud, existence, and its idea in mind or in writing. That alone is common between them. As an idea in mind or as a word pronounced or written, wujud is common to both. But as reality is out there, they have only some kind of resemblance between them. As for one having something of the essence or the attributes of the other, the falsity of that idea would be apparent to anyone who thinks over it. Those who have not realized it, yet are those who have not thought it over. What is true of the term essence, zat, the thing itself, ain, the self, nafs, the quiddity, mahiyya, or reality, hakika, is also true of wujud. Just as reality is divisible into necessary reality and possible reality, and just as quiddity and essence are divisible, similarly wujud is also divisible. And just by saying that reality or quiddity are divisible into the necessary and the possible, it does not follow that the quiddity of the necessary has something of the quiddity of the possible. Saying that wujud is divisible into the necessary and the possible does not imply that the wujud of the necessary should have something of the wujud of the possible. In fact, the necessary being has neither the existence as such nor the quiddity as such. Its quiddity is identical with its reality and its existence. As the existence, wujud, of a particular created being out there is identical with its essence, zat, or reality, hakika, of God is all the more identical with his existence, wujud, in which nothing else participates, and which is same as his quiddity that exists in itself. Dar Ta'arud al-Aql wal-Naql, Volume 1, 292-3. Are the attributes of God other than his essence? God is qualified with attributes which cannot be separated from his self. This means that his attributes are not over and above his essence. However, we can distinguish in thought between them and say that his attributes are over and above his essence in knowledge, belief, and description. One may ask whether the attributes of God are over and above his essence. The answer is that the being which is out there is qualified with attributes. There is no divine essence out there without any attributes. In fact, there is not a single essence out there stripped of all attributes. The word zat is the feminine of zu, which is always used in a construct form. Zat as such came later on. Originally, people used to say zat ilm, zat qudra, or zat sam. That is one having knowledge, having power, having hearing, and so on. In the Quran we have, and quote, "Fear God and set right zat bainakum," chapter 8, verse 1. That is between you, people say, and quote, "She is zat mal or zat jamal." That is, she is one that has wealth or one that has beauty. Later on, when people realized that the divine self is zat, ilm, qudra, sam, basar, that it has knowledge, power, hearing, and seeing, and came to realize it in opposition to those who negated these attributes, they put the definite article on the word, which replaced its use in a construct form. So when we say it means one having something, it follows therefore that there cannot be any zat which is not a zat having an attribute such as knowledge, power, etc., neither in language nor in thought. When the scholars of the Ahlus Sunnah say that as-sifat za'ida ala zat, it means that the attributes are more than za'ida, what the negators of attributes think of them in relation to the divine essence, Az-Zat. These negators only affirm an essence which has no attributes. It is in opposition to them that the Ahlus Sunnah affirm the additional character of the attributes, that they are in addition to divine essence in our knowledge, belief, and statements, not that they are over and above the divine self. Not at all. On the contrary, the divine self is ever qualified with those attributes which are inseparable from it. Neither are the attributes without the essence, nor is the essence without the attributes. For a detailed treatment of the point, see my other writings. Fatawa 17, 161 to 162. The way of the elders with regard to divine attributes.